Hello and welcome to the Perk Coffee Cast, episode 10. New roast, who dis? All about dark. It's been a long time, uh, so apologies for that, but it feels good to get back and be able to just chat about something again. So uh, I'm here. Sorry, I totally forgot my spiel. I'm here with co-owners of Perk, Alan and Philip. So welcome back to the cast, guys. And Philip, why don't you tell us, in case anybody doesn't know based on the title, what are we drinking today?
Well, first of all, hello world. I've missed you. Um, we are drinking DARRRK, which is the word dark with extra R's. Uh, I like to say it's a pirate's favorite coffee. Uh, yeah, so we forever we have not had anything roasted to this level, and it's pretty intentional. Part of when I started the company and when Alan and I started scheming on how to exactly what we wanted to do and how we wanted to and what we wanted to present. A lot of it was that we the what we always said was we'd never roast anything we wouldn't be happy to take home and drink. So there's nothing that we'll ever put out that we personally don't like and aren't super excited about. And well, for a long time we weren't super excited about dark roast. And then one day I think I think Alan challenged the me and the roasting team, like, what would be a dark roast that we would like? Is there something out there? Like, can we use all of our focus and all of our knowledge we've gained over the years to try to make something that satisfies both those who want that sort of heavier, thicker body of a dark roast, but that still has some of the really unique and awesome characteristics of the single origin coffees that we really love, and dark as a result.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, for those who are new or don't recall, I've found myself over the time being kind of towards that milder range of coffees and coming from, not having a long background in coffee industry. The this one really intrigued me because it's like, I don't even know how to describe it, where it's not balanced the way that we describe on the scale of mild to wild, but it's kind of both, right? Like it has both that mild, like smoky flavor with also having some of those wild fruity notes at the end is really intriguing. But Alan, Philip mentioned that you had been challenging people or challenging the team to come up with something dark that tastes great. What made you want to do this so bad?
Yeah, so I think it was just, can we, right? So we've been asked for forever. I mean, since I imagine for Philip day one, like, hey, like, give me your dark roast, right? Like,
Yep.
uh and people have asked for it, and we've experimented with it a lot previously. So including our current juggernaut, in the iterations leading up to it, we took a couple of coffees. We had a Colombian coffee and a Brazilian coffee that we pushed further and further and further. Actually, a couple of Brazilian coffees, and they kind of hit this tipping point where it goes from the sweetness that we enjoy in a coffee, like that gives way um, to just kind of a harsher flavor, and it's just not what we enjoyed, and you lose a lot of the unique characteristics of the coffee. So yeah, the question is, like, can yeah, let's forget that that's usually what someone would roast dark, and say, like, what what could we use as the base that would uh make it still really good. So I think we started with sweetness, which is, that's, if there's like one telltale sign that you're drinking a perk coffee, like, it's that we maximize sweetness, and that is in what we source, in how we roast it, and in how we prepare it. Like, we're always maximizing sweetness. I don't think anyone's ever had a black cup of coffee and been like, oh, this is too sweet. I don't know about this one. Um, so so we're always looking for that. So that's what we did, and probably the sweetest coffee in our lineup right now, or we were doing this kind of during the previous season, was a natural Ethiopia. And the question was, how far can we push it and still retain that sweetness? And I think the first couple iterations like got progressively better, and that one did retain sweetness better than I think we tried all of the core coffees that we had that were options. And through a few iterations of that, and now our current natural Ethiopia, the Sasaba. So this is the third like full production iteration of it that we tried, and it hit that mark of it has that like rich roastiness up front,
Yeah.
and just so much body. It's crazy. But then instead of becoming harsh, like it just becomes really sweet, and there's just like that hint of it. You're not going to drink it and be like, blueberry, this is blueberry. It's just kind of
Right.
like vague fruity goodness at the end of it. And I think that makes it really approachable for someone who is coming from just dark roasted coffee. They still get some of those flavors they're looking for, but then also get sweetness and something different. Or for someone like me who may love just a natural Ethiopia espresso or an Americano, just the textural difference that you get from this. I mean, it was actually problematic for me the first couple shots that I pulled, because there's so much crema when you pull a shot of espresso of this coffee that it was overflowing my shot glass. Just the volume was massive. So you do create just a totally different drinking experience for both of those people. And we landed in a spot where there's aren't coffees offered in that way.
Right. And just to add, I think a lot of what we talk a lot about is, we have a balance of, we've been doing this for a long time, and we have a mission. We have a clear set of what we want to coffees we want to source, and what we want them to taste like, and what we want to share with the world, and hope that the world, or that folks drink it and are super excited about it. Maybe they're even having coffees roasted like this and tasting like this for the first time, and this is something that that they kind of, one of those doors you kind of go through, and you can't kind of go back the other way. But in that, there are some challenges, right? There are some challenges that you're asking folks to take something that's very personal, their morning cup of coffee or whenever they drink their coffee, and have it a very, very different way. And then there's also some technical challenges, right? So we have issues with, you have to grind it finer, and you have to understand a little bit more about brewing to make the coffees typically the profiles that we typically roast taste just right. And that's the case with any profile. But if you're coming from a darker profile, you may not know what things you need to tweak to get that taste right. And so we also, while we want to present this really specific thing that we are super excited to tell the world about, we also want to invite the world. We want to be accessible. We want to have something for everyone. So it was always kind of this challenge of like, how do we have something for everyone, not disappoint stuff or people, sorry, but still kind of do what our mission is. So it'll still kind of fit what we set out to do. And so this is one of those that challenged us a little bit, right? So it was really fun to taste all the coffees darker, to cup them that way, and then cup the regular profiles. Just a lot of interesting things learned there, so that's great. And then even getting down to the final profiles, it was down to two, right? And there was one that leaned a little less roasty and a little more fruity, and one that leaned a little more roasty and a little less fruity, both with a similar sweetness. So they both worked. I think in the end, we went with the coffee that was a little more roasty, because we really wanted to deliver on that dark name. And we didn't want, definitely within the lineup, it's a coffee that, when someone's saying what's the darkest thing, or something like that, it really satisfies that as far as the body and that sort of chewy, really great mouthfeel that I think the folks who are typically used to drinking darks will enjoy.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask that question, so I'm glad that you got to it. You know where I was going. Like, how many coffees you tried this with, and to try and figure out which one is exactly the profile you wanted for dark.
A lot. And we've been really lucky in that we've gotten really better and better at profiling coffees over the years. We've had better and better equipment to do so, so that there's less and less. It's not waste because we have processes for making sure we don't have a whole lot of waste. But we can do much smaller batches to try different roast levels, and we have two different small roasters that we can use, and even have then when we pull it to the bigger roasters, now we have our 15 kilo roaster before it goes to the big 35 kilo roaster. So all of those things have just enabled us to get better and better at what we do, and to follow these kind of like what all can this coffee do before we're ready to let the public taste a cup of it. So really exciting time for Perk in general for profiling.
So just thinking about kind of the process of making a dark or exploring a dark roast, right? Kind of stepping all the way back and going to basics. Alan, you said a couple times, push it a little further, right? Like, what do you mean explicitly when we say push it, and like what is the limit of put like, because I know the roasters have a large temperature range they can go to. So what are you looking at, I guess, from a starting point?
Yeah, Philip, you want to talk through
sorry,
some
Philip,
like
yeah.
roasting basics?
Maybe I can talk a little bit about the roasting, and Alan, maybe you can talk just a little bit about the history of dark roast and sort of that kind of stuff. So the roasting bit, I mean, there's a lot, there's a million different decisions you can make in the roaster. You can stop at every degree. Typically what you're going to see is you're going to drop your coffee in a relatively hot roaster, and immediately I'm going to use my hands a little bit because you got to see. so immediately you drop and you'll see. Sorry, I don't know how big the screen is, so I need you to see my hands. I have like little raptor hands. So immediately you'll see that the coffee start to develop the curve, and it'll immediately drop in temperature and go down, and then it'll turn around. There's a turnaround point, and then it'll start creeping back up. And as it creeps back up, you hit different stages of the roast. You'll see, first of all, when you drop the coffee, it's green, what we call green coffee, so raw coffee. And typically around 270 degrees or so, it'll start turning yellow. And then as you get past that 300 degrees, 320 degrees, you start to see those first elements of that browning, which is called the Maillard reaction. It's same thing as when you make toast. It's a fancy name, but it's not that fancy, or maybe it is. So, anyways, and then you keep roasting it, and then as you get a little hotter, as you get into around 380 degrees, this is an interesting time for the coffee because the beans are expanding and they're letting off heat, obviously, and they're letting off some moisture as they cook and expanding, and you're going from an endothermic reaction to it starts to go to an exothermic reaction where the beans start to give off that heat, and that happens, and it happens around 390 degrees or so in our roaster, and you hear obviously an audible crack. And so that's when if you ever heard the word first crack, that's when that would happen. And at that point, you're deciding from first crack until when we would typically dump it, that's what we call development time. And that's when you're really developing sugars, caramelization, all those things, and really deciding, if you've had like white sugar versus brown sugar. So white sugar technically is sweeter and it has that kind of sucrosey thing, and then brown sugar has a little bit more kind of richer sweetness, darker sweetness. And so you're just deciding how much you want to cook those sugars and where you want to develop that coffee as far as balancing acidity and the sugars and the roastiness. And so at that point you can really start, it's drinkable coffee, and you can start taking samples and testing those samples and deciding. So really anytime between then and typically, I think in most roasters, you would hear second crack around I'm a little less familiar with second crack, but I think you would hear second crack around 450 degrees ish, maybe. I could be wrong on that. Maybe a little hotter, and then you can still keep going and really roast it out to what we would think of as like Italian French roast and then Italian roast, which is further past second
Third
crack.
crack.
So yeah, no, there
There
is
is
an
no
interesting.
That's the roast they're breaking.
Now there is an interesting thing that happens. So as you get past second crack, what happens is oils start to release from the bean. So if you've seen your coffee and
Yeah.
it has oils on it, typically that means you've gone past second crack. But sometimes just before second crack, you might see a spot or two of oil every so often, and then once you hit French roast or Italian roast, they're just glistening, covering with oils. What's really interesting is when you take it even further and really roast it out, the oils actually go back into the beans. Most people haven't seen that unless you've been part of trying to, when you season a drum for the first time in a roaster, you'll typically want to roast a coffee a really long time to get those oils into the drum. It's like seasoning a cast iron pan almost. So anyways, I think I probably went into way too long of an answer, but there's and also pretty vague because there's a lot of, that's what the challenge is, right? There's just almost endless every degree. And then also it's not just degree, but it's also that shape of the curve. Like how hard and fast do you want to roast it or long do you want to roast it? So those are kind of your two things. It's a time and temperature is really what you're dealing with. And there's, so like oftentimes we'll say, well, we hit, whatever, this coffee is we roasted it to 414, but there's multiple ways to get it to 414. So anyways.
And you could leave it there.
It is complicated. So hopefully people are like, wow, you're really good at what you do. but oftentimes, like, it's just like with everything else, like as you do it a lot and have a lot of experience, you start to get a little bit better understanding of which coffees you might want to set up different ways and how they like to be roasted. And then based off of initial results, you have a really good idea of really quick changes you need to make, and then you start making the more subtle ones.
So probably the least interesting part to you, but the part that I notice immediately, like a difference between a perk coffee or a lot of craft. I don't know if craft's the right word, but that's what I'm using.
It works for me.
And is that it's that lighter brown color, but there's like a little yellowish piece to it. I'm not really sure what that is, but there's like something left in the coffee that when you grind it up is still there, as opposed to a dark roast like you were talking about is that shiny. So Alan, you look really intrigued and ready to answer this.
Well, so that has more to do with the coffee processing than it does the roast level.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so that has to do with wash versus natural processed coffees.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So the wash would not have that, I presume.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. Whereas the natural does. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, asking the wrong questions, and this is a roast podcast, and I'm asking processing.
Yeah.
Did I learn nothing?
But that's.
I forgot to mention that the beans do almost double in size, probably double in size, and then they typically lose around 15% ish, depending on how far. The further you roast, obviously, the more weight you lose in water as you go. So those are typically things. Other ways to look and see, we can measure our moisture loss and see how consistent we're being, or what we want to shoot for. So there's different aspects you can look for, but I think that it's always a balance in what you're going for, and sort of shooting for these flavors, but still trying to kind of make something that I think that finish on the dark is what really is surprising. That typically at a dark roast, and the sweetness, and then a little bit of fruit, but then like typically with dark roast, I find what really bothers me is like just after you've swallowed it, it kind of keeps tasting like something I'm not happy about having in my mouth. So this one has a really quick kind of clean finish that I think is really terrific.
Yeah, and so there's, one other component that I think matters a lot, particularly in this world we're living in with dark, is kind of the evenness of it. So not particularly different from cooking or baking. The kind of the time in which you're achieving So think searing something
Mhm.
versus like low temperature baking it, right? So that evenness the whole way through versus that much more cooked or even burnt version on the outside, right? And there's a point you get to where with coffee beans where like they have that tipping, that like burning around the outside edge of it, and the inside is less baked effectively, right? Less roasted. Um, and the opposite of that would be a really long, slower roast where you don't have that. It's more even the whole way through, and there's definitely a middle ground. There's a trade-off of like how even do you want the thing to taste versus how much do you want to get some of the aspects of, again, it's like something that you would sear when you're cooking, where you kind of want that duality of the flavors that come from that outside caramelization, and then also what's happening on the inside that's maybe not cooked as much. So that definitely plays into it as well,
So
which is a factor of
would
time.
would the dark or the dark be more of a sear, or is it a Thanksgiving turkey kind of cook?
Yeah, we actually decided we wanted to roast it a little faster, but also to a further degree. I don't think I did a hand gesture.
Yeah.
And that was that was because the other thing that Alan didn't mention is too, if you just take a roast and you lengthen it, you're gonna get that evenness, and but you're also going to lose some stuff. And so you might lose a lot of the character of the coffee. It might start to taste. I might use some weird words here. So the words I use, I call it flabby. But so yeah, it's a weird thing. So if you
What,
cook
like
it too
jello-y texture, or what? Like
no,
what
no,
is?
it's not texture so much as you lose the acidity, right? So when you cook it slowly, you lose the acidity, and what the result of losing that acidity is when there isn't acidity. I like to say acidity, and this isn't me, but I've had a lot of awesome folks that have contributed to my coffee knowledge in life. But I like to say that acidity is the backbone of flavor, and then when you roast it really slowly, it's like it doesn't have a spine. You know what I mean? It
Yeah,
tastes flabby, like it just doesn't have
I
structure.
see.
And so you do get that evenness, and you may even get some nice body, but you're going to be missing a whole other aspect of
Yeah,
what coffee should taste like.
it's a metaphor for the coffee.
Yeah,
Yeah,
flabby.
yeah. I thought you were gonna say flat. I heard the
Flat
F,
is
and
a
I was
better,
like
probably
flat.
a
I was like,
better.
that's
Yeah,
the
that's
word that I
probably a
use.
better word.
Jellyfish,
Yeah.
jellyfish coffee.
Flabby.
But yeah, I mean, that's an important distinction as well with what we were trying to do with dark, right? So I mean, you mentioned a little bit of about history of dark roast, but like dark roast came about. There was a period in kind of mid 1900s where coffee rust. It was a kind of a blight on coffee where Arabica fell way short of being able to produce enough coffee like in the world for consumers, and there's this big shift to Robusta, which doesn't taste the same as Arabica, and these darker roasts that came with it were deliberately trying to mask some of the flavors in the Robusta to get people to still be willing to drink it, right? Um, and yeah, I mean, so dark roast really has its origins in flavor masking, and what we were trying to do at the dark was really the opposite of that, right? Like we didn't want the flat coffee, we didn't want the predominant flavor to just be burnt toast, right? Like we
Sure,
wanted
sure.
it to be we wanted it to have all of that body and then still accentuate the when we say acidity, like that doesn't necessarily mean like it's sour, like it's gonna make you pucker or
Right,
anything.
right.
Like dark is on this scale, like it has some of that fruity acidity at the end, but it's relative, right?
Yeah, it's
Um,
pretty. It's just enough to make the coffee taste structured. I don't know
mhm,
that you would taste it, and anybody would say like, "Ooh, there's acidity in this coffee." But
right.
if there's not, then it would taste. You would miss it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think.
yeah. I mean,
I don't
right.
know. I don't know who you are, but I would miss it.
I mean, personally, I don't like the Ethiopia Natural in our lineup. It's too sweet for me, and
Oh,
but I love the dark roast, and so I think it does
interesting.
like it's balanced it out. Or I'm a guy that burns his marshmallow for the s'more because it's part impatience probably from when I was younger, but now it's just what I like. So I think maybe it's might be striking that balance, but I think
so that the toasted marshmallow, like that thing that is happening to the outside of your marshmallow when it's that like golden brown color, not all the way to that to black to lit it on fire, but when when you nail it, it's just that like golden brown, like that is the thing that is happening
yeah.
with the dark, like it is
Right.
both chemically, like it's the same thing, but the texture and flavor richness that adds to a marshmallow, that
Right.
if you just eat a plain marshmallow, it's just like white sugary sweetness, right?
Yep.
It's the same thing is happening going from the normal roast profile of the Sasaba to this, and that's I think it's a really cool thing. I don't honestly know that I have a preference for one or the other. Like this goes all the way back to our first episode of the Legender, where I said that's my first cup of the day, right? Like I want that just kind of mellower drinking coffee. The dark has elbowed its way into that spot a lot of days for me, where because it doesn't have as much of that punchy acidity as the normal Sasaba profile, it's one that I find myself reaching for really frequently as that first cup of the day. In fact, the T2, the second test profile we did, the one that we were deciding between on these, I just finished off the 5-pound bag of that, I think yesterday. It's because it's so many mornings, like I'll just reach for that as the first cup of the day, and it's so good.
Yeah, and Alan mentioned before, but it especially shines on espresso. And then if you want to add a little milk to it, this is a coffee that is one of the best coffees that we offer with that. I think that goes with milk. I think the Juggernaut also is a pretty good coffee with milk, and even the Brazil. But I think that this one, it's something special with a little bit of milk in it. And typically I don't have a whole lot of milky beverages, but or oat milk or whatever kind of thing you want to add to it. But I think that folks that like a cappuccino or something like that, I think would be really, really excited about this one.
It is outside of, there are some crazy coffees that just do really fun things with milk, but outside of the super, super crazy coffees, traditionally processed coffees, it is hands down the best coffee and milk combination, or espresso milk combination I've ever had. Full stop. Like I freaked out the first time I made a latte of it. I actually made it for my wife. I was like, let me take a sip of this and see how it is. Made one for myself immediately thereafter.
Not yours anymore.
It's insane how good it is with, well, both just, I mean, normally brewed, I think it's good, and honestly a splash of milk makes it better. Just in regular drip brew or an Americano or whatever, like a splash of milk, because it adds just one
goes
more
with any beverage usually, but yes, a splash of milk just makes it better.
Just makes it better.
Brought to you by the dairy industry.
Just picture like milk in your orange juice. And,
that's my sister-in-law has a thing they call so in Michigan they call it pop, and they called it pop milk. It was like Coca-Cola and milk.
I don't know,
man.
But apparently, I mean, it's
I'll
like a float,
once.
right? Like a melted float. I'll try it once.
That's true. Yeah. Okay, I could see that.
Rationally, it made sense that when she said that.
Maybe just I'll
weird.
stick with the ice cream though.
Sorry, I derailed it.
We don't normally talk about these, but we had a specialty drink. It was one of the summer drinks. The Rootin' Scootin' Boogie was a so it
so
tastes
good.
Like beer, but in a latte, and there is nothing that I can get my brain to compute that a hot milk beverage with root beer flavor should be good. It was so good.
It was, and unfortunately we didn't sell as many as we should have. Like, I really wanted to like kind of be like, everyone today is getting a Rootin' Scootin' Boogie, and then we'll make you whatever you want, but you have to taste it. Because I think a lot of people saw it and were just a little too, I don't know if I want to get that. Interesting, but thanks. But it was really good.
Sometimes you just got to trust and take a sip, and then
it was also because we also did it cold, and it was where I had the idea to add the floater. So I wanted to add something on the
Which
menu where
was
we would put a little scoop of ice cream in the top of
Oh, okay.
every
Yeah.
coffee. It's called the floater.
that's an
You
important
want to add a
distinction.
Yeah.
floater?
You want to add a floater?
I
No,
couldn't
thanks.
convince the retail staff to get on board. I don't know why.
Yeah. So, well, we're kind of talking brewing. I'll talk
Yeah,
brewing
yeah.
a little bit with
Let's
this.
Yeah,
jump into it.
please.
There was nothing else on
Yeah.
history you wanted to touch
Yeah,
on,
and
right?
this
Sorry.
is important because it's a very different coffee than most of our others.
Yeah. I mean, this is a coffee that I found does well, kind of with everything. I really enjoy just throwing the auto drip home brewer. I think it's great. It's really good in an AeroPress, which is something that kind of lends extra body to it anyway. And then espresso though is where this coffee just really shines. But we talk a lot about doing everything by weight, especially for espresso. Like really important to do everything by weight, not by volume. And this coffee is so much the epitome of why that's the case. So you're using the Breville Barista Express, which is something we dial all the coffees in on. It's the most common machine that people use at home, or that our customers at least use at home. Normally I do an 18-gram dose. Like I've standardized all the recipes; they all use an 18-gram dose. That doesn't work for the dark. It is because it's so much less dense, because there's more water loss, because we've roasted it darker. The volume takes up too much space in the portafilter bath. You can't pull an 18-gram shot without it just kind of going haywire. And I actually reduced it all the way down to 15 grams instead of 20 grams. So it's 20% reduction in your dose, just because the volume is so much higher. And then, I mean, you can pull shots of it really easily. It's really forgiving on espresso. Like once you figure out how to fit in your basket, because so when coffees are roasted darker, there's just more heat applied over the course of the roast, which means more cellular destruction of the coffee bean itself. Which means
That's my new band, Cellular Destruction.
Cellular destruction. There you go. But that just means that in the brewing process, it's easier, it's faster for water to pull the compounds that we want to extract out of the coffee bean, out of the ground coffee. So overall contact time is going to be shorter. You're going to grind it coarser than you would normally, and then also the natural Ethiopia, like the Sasaba, on any roast profile already needs a coarser grind than most coffees do. So with this, you're compounding both the roast profile and the fact that it's a natural Ethiopian. It just needs a really coarse grind for everything. But yeah, that's it. If you can try this on espresso, and particularly in an espresso milk drink of your pick of ratio, anything from a little macchiato up to a latte, it's hard to taste it and believe that the only two things in that cup are coffee and milk, because there's just so much flavor. There's so many things happening. It is phenomenal.
And is this on bar at any of the perk shops or retail stores?
It's not. I would love to have a third grinder that we could offer dark lattes. I think Amber, our retail director, might kill me in my sleep if I tried to sneak a third grinder on bar, or fourth grinder on bar.
Technically, we have the mild wild decaf
and
this would be a fourth. So a lot to work on dialing in, and our staff and Amber and Addison take dial-ins really, really, really seriously, and we work really hard to kind of leave no stone unturned, both with our profiling but also with our dialing in. And not that anyone else doesn't. I don't know what they do, but yeah. And so adding another one to the mix, especially one that's so different, right now isn't in the cards. I think that I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we yeah. We like to take it slow and make sure that we're pretty ahead of the game as far as how we get coffees dialed in.
Awesome. There is at least one alibi. We didn't talk about any of the background information or the traits of the coffee. Elevation, origins. I don't know if we have that handy, but it is the Sasama, right?
Correct.
It is.
Yeah. Well, let's. I mean, I did not prepare.
Broke the script. Needs to get on it.
Go to the website quick.
For more information.
Now's a great time to
see.
say if you
We
are ever
lost
wondering
service.
any of these things about our coffees, perkcoffee.com
That's
is a great resource.
That's right.
That's what
Okay,
we're-
elevation is 2,150 meters above sea level. And let's see, it's from Guji. It's from a place called Kercha, which is in Guji, according to the website. Sometimes Ethiopian geography, I can find when I'm doing research, I can find conflicts. Like I'll look at one map and then I'll look at another map, and they won't be the same. So it can be a little bit.
Be here because
Yeah, it can be a little
same.
challenging. Like
Sure.
one resource says it's in Guji, one says it's just outside of Guji. So probably need to get over there soon. That would be fun. But yeah, check out the website. We try to do a really good job of having lots of information, both on about the coffees and about brewing and everything else. Also, almost all of it I have exclusively written, so I'd love somebody to read my dad jokes and appreciate them.
I liked the email that came out for the DARRRK after. I don't remember if it was after or before you buy it, but I got one. It's around Halloween, right? And so you had mentioned something about Frankenstein's lab. And
I wrote that one and sent that to Alan, and I got this message like, what was your response? It was like, what did you? I don't know. I think he was like dumbfounded that
we went to Dr. Frankenstein's lab and found the coffee that he was brewing.
Yeah, he's like, dude, can we just talk about the coffee? I was like, all right, how about this? And he's like, better, thank you.
Well,
it still lived in the email that went out.
Yeah. And in fact, this is another time to plug our newsletter. We offer a lot of exclusive things through the newsletter, and we found that we have a really good relationship with our email flows and our newsletter folks. We offer a lot of deals exclusively through the newsletter, and then obviously with every coffee drop, you'll get a notification and a little something about it. So I know that I have a tendency to unsubscribe and try to only keep certain newsletters, but this one, if you like coffee, and especially if you like Perk Coffee, I think is worth potentially subscribing. You'll have to make the call though.
I love it's like a shameless plug with an apology at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, I know that they can be annoying, but we try to, we understand that. So we both try to respectfully not send that many out. And when we do, we try to make sure that there's something worth it in everyone, whether that's both information and also potentially discounts or opportunities.
All right. Well, unless there's anything else to add, guys, I think thanks everybody for listening, learning a little bit about the roasting process, and I hope you're excited to try DARRRK if you haven't yet, or just we're excited to hear about it because we're all pretty excited to bring it to you.
Nice.
Thanks for listening.
Goodbye, world.
Thanks, y'all.